Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be telling a story about civil rights activist Rosa Parks. Her refusal to surrender her seat to a white passenger on Montgomery, Alabama bus spurred a citywide boycott. The city of Montgomery had no choice but to lift the law requiring segregation on public bus, which changed the history of racial equality. Rosa Parks was born on February 4, 1913 in Tuskegee, Alabama. Rosa Parks' childhood brought her early experiences with racial discrimination and activism for racial equality. After her parents separated, Rosa's mother moved the family to Pine Level, Alabama to live with her parents. Rosa and Sylvester Edwards, both former slaves and strong advocates for racial equality, the family lived on Ed Farm, where Rosa would spend her youth. In one experience, Rosa's grandfather stood in front of their house with a shotgun while Ku Klux Klan members marched down the street. Rosa Parks' mother taught her how to read at a young age. Rosa went on to attend a segregated one-room school in Pine Level, Alabama that often lacked adequate school supplies such as desks. African American students were forced to walk to the 1st through 6th grade schoolhouse, while the city of Pine Level provided bus transportation as well as new school buildings for white students. Though the rest of Rosa's education, she attended segregated schools in Montgomery, including the City Industrial Schools for girls beginning the age of 11 in 1929. While in the 11th grade and attending the Laboratory School for Secondary Education led by Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes. Rosa left school to attend to both her sick grandmother and mother back in Pine Level, Alabama. Fortunately, she never returned to her studies. Instead, she got a job at a shirt factory in Montgomery. In 1932, at the age of 19, Rosa met and married Raymond Parks, a barber and an active member of the National Association for Achievement and Colored People. With Raymond's support, Rosa earned her high school degree in 1933. She soon became actively involved in the civil rights issues by joining the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP in 1943, serving the chapter's youth leader as a secretary to the NAACP president E.D. Nixon, as post she held in 1957. On December 1st, 1955, after a long day of work at the Montgomery department store, where she worked as a seamstress, Rosa Parks boarded the Cleveland Avenue bus for home. So she took a seat in the first of the several rows designated for colored passengers. Though the city's bus ordinance did not give drivers the authority to assign seats, it didn't specifically give the authority to demand a passenger to give up a seat to anyone, regardless of color. However, Montgomery bus drivers had adopted the custom of requiring black passengers to give up their seats to white passengers when no other seats were available. If the black passenger protested, the bus driver had the authority to refuse service and could call the police to have them removed. As the bus Rosa was riding continued on its route, it began to fill with white passengers. Eventually, the bus was full, and the driver noticed that several white passengers were standing in the aisle. He stopped the bus and moved the sign separating the two sections back one row and asked for passengers to give up their seats. 3 complied, but Rosa, she refused and remained seated. The driver demanded, "Why don't you stand up?" To which Rosa replied, "I don't think I should have to stand up." The driver called the police and had her arrested. Later, Rosa recalled that her refusal wasn't because she physically was tired, but that she was tired of giving in. The police arrested Rosa at the scene and charged her with a violation Chapter 6, Section 11 of the Montgomery City Code. She was taken to the police headquarters where later that night she was released on bail. On the evening that Rosa Parks was arrested, E.D. Nixon headed the local chapter of the NAACP, began forming plans to organize a boycott Montgomery City buses. Ads were placed in local newspapers, handbills, and were printed and distributed in black neighborhoods. Members of the African community were asked to stay off the city buses on Monday, December 5, 1955, the day Rosa's trial, in protest to her arrest. So people were encouraged to stay home from work or school, take a cab, or walk to work. With most of the African American community not riding the bus, organizers believe a longer boycott might be successful. Members of the African community took legal actions. Armed with the Board versus Brown education decision, which stated that separate but equal policies had no place in public education. A black legal team took the issue of segregation in public transit system to the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Alabama. Rosa's attorney, Fred Gray, filed the suit, and in 1956, the district court declared racial segregation laws, also known as Jim Crow laws, were unconstitutional. The city of Montgomery appealed the court's decision shortly after, but on November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld the lower court's ruling. Although she had become a symbol of the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks suffered hardship in the months following her arrest in Montgomery and subsequently boycott. She lost her department job and her husband was fired after her boss forbade him to talk about his wife or legal case. Unable to find work, they eventually left Montgomery. The couple, along with Rosa's mother, moved to Detroit, Michigan. There, Rosa made a new life for herself, working as a secretary and receptionist in the U.S. Representative John Coyer Congregation office. She also served as the board of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. On October 2005, at the age of 92, Rosa quietly died in her apartment in Detroit, Michigan. She had been diagnosed with the previous year of progressive dementia. Her death was marked with several memorial services lying in the state capitol rotunda in Washington, D.C., where an estimate of 50,000 people viewed her casket. Rosa was interred between her husband and her mother, Detroit Woodlawn Cemetery, in the Chapel Mausoleum. Shortly after her death, the chapel was renamed the Rosa L. Parks Freedom Chapel. Thank you.